Thank you very much, dear Danuta, and also thank you very much, Sven, our rapporteur, for this important report on transparency, accountability and integrity in the European Union institutions, which I believe offers a unique opportunity to create a coherent approach for further enhancing standards in all three interconnected areas. I am especially grateful for the preparatory work that we have done before you presented the report for the first time formally to the AFCO committee, and I think that the workshops which were held with the participation of a large number of competent and concerned both MEPs and the officials of the EU institutions were a very useful exercise in the process of preparing the report. Since many different actors participate in the EU decision-making process, it is crucial to make it as transparent as possible in order to fully realise the meaning of the transparency principle as stipulated by the treaties. There is little doubt that transparency and accountability are essential to recover and build trust with European citizens, as well as to confirm the legitimacy of the EU's institutions. Our citizens should have the right to even higher levels of transparency, and this report aims exactly towards that direction. Citizens' confidence in the legislative process and the legitimacy of the EU institutions is inseparably linked to the transparency, integrity and accountability. This is why the EPP will show strong commitment and openness in this regard. Nevertheless, it is essential to find the right balance between transparency and other values, principles and good practices in the work of the EU institutions. It seems that in some aspects the draft report just goes a bit too far and adopts quite a far-reaching application of the principle, perhaps failing to take into account other values which might be jeopardized. There are several important and perhaps even contentious issues in regard to some proposals which are now contained in the draft report. For instance, it does not seem acceptable that the mere possibility of voters to approach and contact their representatives in the European Parliament without excessive and perhaps even a bureaucratic burden. The efficiency of negotiations between Member States and international partners will be challenged, as well as perhaps the actual going on of the trialogues which were mentioned in the remarks by Mr. Giegold. Also, in turning the transparency principle into specific provisions, everyday work of the elected representatives or their privacy should not be excessively hindered. Extending the Commission's policy of mandatory reporting for senior parliamentary office holders could interfere with MEPs' democratic responsibilities. Restricting the rapporteurs and committee president from meeting anyone besides registered lobbyists and to publish these meetings online would significantly bureaucratise the work of the MEPs and perhaps complicate the communication with their voters. So I think these are the elements where we should find a reasonable solution and a compromise. Furthermore, the item which was mentioned in the previous debate with the Vice President of the Commission, Mr. Timmermans, and that is the compulsory cooling off periods for commissioners, for MEPs and their staff, in my view is not entirely proportional, although the challenge of revolving doors is not questioned. For all these reasons, our group shall strive to find a balance, a compromise, in a dialogue with the rapporteur, with all the other shadow rapporteurs, with all the other groups, to reach a good solution between the two aspects which I outlined. And it is evident that it is really important to further raise the levels of transparency within the EU institutions. We should make sure that the work of the European institutions is done in such a manner that it is possible to reach deals with our partners in the world. I here specifically refer to many very delicate negotiations which we are having, and the most important one that raised the biggest concern about whether it was transparent enough or not was the TTIP, but not to forget CETA with our Canadian partners. And here, as a former diplomat, I have to admit that if everything is on internet immediately, you really have to be a Kissinger type of diplomat to always prove that you won in negotiations. So a right balance, leaving a margin for serious negotiations, but also adequate information and timely information is something that is a challenge that we have been dealing for many years. And I think this report, when we come to the conclusion, and I think we should give ourselves, and especially the groups, sufficient time to inform all the other colleagues who are not here with us, because this is a report that touches essentially every single MEP, every single group, and therefore when we discussed, Sven and I had a modest suggestion that perhaps we extend a little bit the time for the amendments until the end of February, that all the, because we have holidays, so 2 or 3 weeks we will not be focused on this, but that we give ourselves January and February really enough time to come with good suggestions for the improvement on the text that is on the table. And I'm very much open and looking forward to substantive and good negotiations and a good text that will be a solid contribution to the transparency, integrity and accountability in the EU institutions. Thank you very much.